You're listening to a Benstown and McVay Media Podcast Network production. Run It Again is an inside look at the players, the coaches, and the business of sports with former NFL star and broadcaster Ron Pitts.
And 2 minutes later, I was back in the same Oklahoma drill that I got the concussion from.
And the mastermind behind the greatest show on turf, Coach Mike Martz.
And we want to force him into a vanilla defense and go to work.
Run It Again is a hard-hitting, no BS podcast that connects you directly to the source. This is Run It Again.
Hey, Mike, I gotta jump into this one before we even start talking about Super Bowl, because when it happened, I thought about you immediately because I knew you would have a lot to say about this. The Rams-Lions deal with Goff and Matthew Stafford. So I'll just kind of give a brief outline here and then let you jump into this. The Rams will get Matthew Stafford in a blockbuster trade, and the Lions will get Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks and 1 third-round pick. They'll get 2 first-round picks in 2022, 2023, and they'll get the third-round pick this year, plus along with Jared Goff. Mike, swing away, man.
I think that there was such a personality disconnect between the head coach and Jared Goff in LA that there was a divorce coming somehow, some way. You know, Sean is a very fiery, energetic guy, pedal to the metal. That's not Jared's personality per se. And, you know, if you're not careful, you know, that you just don't communicate, and then resentment builds up. And I think that's kind of some of it. As I watched Jared on tape, mechanically, he's gotten worse since he came out of college.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember with the quarterback, they've got to set fast with their feet, and I don't know whether they coach hard the fundamentals of the footwork and some of those things that you do with the quarterbacks, but he just doesn't set fast, which he can. And he's let that ball down a little bit, he's starting to drop the ball down, take a big stroke. And he was never like that even in college. He was much quicker. So he's much more compact with the ball. And, those are things that are easy to fix. But one thing about quarterbacks is when they're, and I know this sounds silly, but it just is. It's just ingrained, I promise you. The slower the feet, the slower the thought process. They think through things instead of react to it, right? The quicker the feet, it quickens things up for you mentally, and you have a tendency to get the ball out quick, and you can be more compact. And there's some work that needs to be done with Jared. He's not a throwaway by any stretch of the imagination. He's a talented kid, and I don't know that they ever really fit very well. And what he was doing there was a little different. I don't know what the situation is in Detroit in terms of who's going to run the offense and who's coaching Jared, but if Jared ends up being a starter and a good starter up there, then it's a hell of a deal for Detroit.
Yeah. So Dan Campbell, obviously the head coach up there in Detroit. And before I say something about that one, let me go back to something you just said, which just kind of boggles my mind. So at what point did Sean McVay realize he wasn't the guy? Because this is also the guy that took you to a Super Bowl as your quarterback. What happened and when did it happen that the light went on and he said, I
think probably the first year, Ron.
The first year?
I think so. Because I think when I look at their offense, what they do is guarded for that quarterback. In other words, they've kind of put a square around what they think Jared can do well, and they don't ask him to do the other things. He doesn't look real quick with the ball. He wants to see things and think about it a little bit. And they did a remarkable job with him in that respect. So I don't think he was ever really comfortable with the kid in that respect. Now that's just me. I don't know that. Nobody's ever said that to me. That's just, I project that in there.
Yeah.
And their personalities certainly are 180.
Right.
And that's just not going to work. I worked Jared out when he came out and was really impressed with him. He's kind of a quiet, stoic kind of guy. It just, coaching quarterbacks, you don't coach them the same. Each quarterback is completely different. I whispered to Mark Bulger most of the time once he became our starter, because he's such a nice, sensitive guy. So but I knew he was a tough guy, so I didn't worry about it. And then I've had a couple of rockheads where you got to be in their ear. So it's just the way it goes, and you can't just put the pedal to the metal of that kid. And you're not going to develop that relationship.
Mike, oh gosh, man, you always do this. I mean, whenever we start talking about offense, you're great. And then when we start talking about quarterbacks, you're brilliant. And it just leads to more questions. And I know we only have so much time. Okay, let me go back on this. Now, so you said Mark Bulger was also a tough guy. Now, I think a lot of coaches miss that when they got one guy that's on one end of the spectrum. And I know what you're talking about. Mark Bulger came in a couple of our production meetings, and I thought I was talking to an accountant with H&R Block or something, man. I mean, he was just, I looked like a lawyer. He looked like he didn't have any business in that room.
He was like he should be selling China down at the mall or something, Yeah.
Exactly. You talk about the guy that maybe you want your daughter to marry someday.
No question.
He would fit in that mold. But what did he do that made you understand he was a tough guy? Because I'm trying to figure out now, when did McVay know, even though you paid the guy $100 million, when did you know that he probably wasn't the toughest guy or your guy? So
I don't think his toughness is a question.
Yeah.
I don't think toughness with Jared has ever been the question. And I hear people say that all the time. He's a tough kid. You don't do what he did with that finger and keep playing and all that.
No, that's true. That's true.
He's a tough guy. And I think Millie's a tough guy.
Yeah.
To me, it's a competitive part of it. The best competitor on the whole field has to be on your team, has to be the quarterback. Just has to be. To be. You know how competitive Sean is. And so I don't know whether, there's a patience there when you have that personality like Jared. I'm sure he's competitive, but you just get frustrated, because he's not like him. And being a young coach, you just get frustrated a little bit. You can't. You got to find a way, or whoever coaches a kid, you've got to let somebody else deal with that then and find a way to pull his trigger. Or maybe he just feels it's just not good enough.
Was that a case where all of a sudden, maybe they had a time frame that said, okay, Goff, if he can get us there, probably won't get us there till year 3 or 4. And then all of a sudden, he got him there McVay's second year, I believe, because Goff was there. I'm just looking at the board here, 5 years. Came in 2016, and out now. So he came in, and we talked, I don't even know if the NFL thought the Rams would be as good as they were that quick.
Well, that's a credit to Sean, though, not to Goff. Because Sean, the whole team was good.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we came in this season after the COVID thing, and there was 3 or 4 teams that just were playing at a higher level than everybody else? Kansas City, LA, and a couple of those teams. Well, that's a coaching thing.
Yeah. And
I think that the details and the discipline of that football team, the quarterback just got to make sure he does his role. So an extraordinary quarterback will thrive in an environment like that. Well, he's not an extraordinary quarterback, and I don't know if he ever will be, but he might be. He just in the right circumstances. And, and every quarterback, every one of them takes time. Some of them are faster. Brady, boom, there it go. It takes right off. But Kurt Warner, it took time for him to get that. He wasn't an overnight success. He bounced around a little bit, Yeah. So they all take a little bit. It's a different path. And like I said, they're also different. And you can't have the same guide for every quarterback. You can't do it.
Yeah. Okay. So now Stafford comes to LA, Goff goes to the Lions.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Can I back up just a second?
Yeah. Yeah.
In all of this, there was one telling comment through all the garbage. Do you remember what Goff said when he went to Detroit? It's just good to go someplace where they want me,
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, right.
So, I mean, that didn't just happen overnight.
Right.
He didn't have that feeling. That feeling wasn't because he got traded.
No,
obviously that feeling had been there for a while.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he wanted to make sure everyone felt that. He stuck it to him on that one. Right.
Yeah.
Another telling moment for me was in the Seattle game. This was the game that they lost, and Seattle ended up winning the division. And Goff had a couple questionable plays where people thought he could have slid or went head first and gotten the first down and blah, 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 blah. And there was an exchange or lack thereof on the sideline between McVay and Goff because he didn't start Goff that game. Remember, they started the other kid, and that kid ended up getting a concussion, getting a neck injury. So a lot of people thought, there's something weird there. You could see something weird happening. And I think maybe, to your point, Mike, that was the end of the weirdness. This weirdness had been going on for a while.
Yeah, that it peaked there, I think. I think the biggest issue is, Jared's a very, very smart guy, very smart guy. And he has a tendency to really dissect stuff and internalize things, I think. The short time that I was with him anyway, I just got that impression. Because I put him through drills and ask him some things, and I can just see him. And if it was something that he think was important, he just kind of, so, he was pretty easy to read, So with a guy like that, you just there's a buy-in thing there. And the more critical you are of that guy, it's just going to send him the other direction. It has to be, here's why we're doing it, and be positive with it and encourage him. And because he's still young, and then he'll grow out of that eventually. But that's the only way you keep that relationship with him. And Sean, he's got so much going on. He didn't have time for that.
Yeah. So now Dan Campbell's the head coach. I couldn't think of two more different personalities, at least from the outside looking in, than Dan Campbell and Jared Goff.
I know Dan. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. It just feels like Dan Campbell is the type of guy that would bump into a guy like Jared Goff in the bar and wouldn't even say, excuse me, and dare him to fight. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Danny played for us for a couple of years up in Detroit. He's our tight end.
Okay.
I know Dan real well.
Yeah.
One of the nicest people
you'll
ever meet. He's a sweetheart of a guy. He's like Mark Bulger,
Because his pictures don't look like that. And in his press conference, when he said we're going to bite people's kneecaps off, I'm not sure that he's going to get a lot of kneecaps bitten off by Goff. But I feel your point, though, Mike.
But my point there, though, is that when you go in the locker room and put the silks on, and you go out in the field, then it's just like it's just Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. There's a transformation. Now that is a fierce competitor. So the difference between Sean and he is incredible. But what Dan will do, because this is who Dan is, he's a positive, and if he believes in you, then he's going to give you every benefit of the doubt, and he's going to encourage you and still coach you hard and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a different way. Danny Campbell is one of my all-time favorites. I mean, he is salt of the earth. He's kind of what football is to me. Yeah,
boy, from the outside looking in, it looks like Duck Dynasty versus Hollywood chefs, but we'll see how it goes. Interestingly enough, Mike, Mark Brunell is the quarterback coach up there.
Yeah.
With the new staff. Anthony Lynn, former Charger coach, he's the offensive coordinator. Mark Brunell is a quarterback coach. Deuce Staley, running back coach. I'm just reading down the list. Old Hank Fraley is the old line coach. So there's some football people in place here, and that's just on the offensive side.
I didn't know that was a staff. That's a very strong staff.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that I know in offense at Detroit. They had a couple of real strong coaches there, but not a whole staff that was very strong.
Right.
Because remember, and from a coach's perspective, you're looking for a job, you're out of work. You're at that point, you're going to take anything. But if you had a choice between Detroit and someplace else, you weren't going to go to Detroit.
Yeah.
That was just
that's true. No, that's true.
That was the junkyard. You're done. So you didn't want to go there. But since they've changed so much there, and Danny's going there, it really is, and that's why it was always hard to attract really top-notch head coaches there. Well, but you got a guy in Danny now that believes in the place, which you've never had there before.
Well, right. And Mike, you've been in that shop a lot. You were up there coaching, and
2 years, yeah.
I know the area real well. I was born and partly raised in Detroit, so I know the people, I know the area. And my first instinct was Jared Goff is not a Detroit blue collar, roll up your sleeves. We're working down here at the Ford plant all day and night long, and he's not that guy. But hold on, that's the perception. Now let's see what he does on the field.
Well, that's all they really care about. They're so hungry to win up there, they could care less about the other stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, yes, there's that element blue collar there, but there's also that other side of it too. There's kind of that California thing in the northern part of Detroit, where the nicer burbs up there and all that, so there's
Dearborn.
yeah, exactly. So there's all kinds of,
Yeah.
all I know is they would do anything to have a winner there. And if they don't, they don't care if you come into the stadium on the horse backwards, they're going to be excited about it if you can help them win.
Coming in the stadium with the horse backwards. That's a good one. Defensive coordinator is Aaron Glenn. Remember Aaron, former player?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Man, I tell you, that's how old I'm getting. I did Aaron's college games, a couple of his college games there. So, man. Okay, so we'll move on from that, and we'll to be continued. But it is a big move, and I know the Rams are getting a tough guy and a guy who's got some years left in him too, especially with the new rules for quarterbacks now. If Brady and the bunch can play into their late 30s and 40s, then this kid can do the same thing as well.
Yeah, here's one other point I'd like to make about this, if I can.
Yeah.
When you're a top pick and you become the starter right away like that, and you have a guy that was a late round pick, for instance, Brady or some of these other guys that have been kicked around for a few years before they get their opportunity. There's just a different dynamic personality wise and intensity. When you bounce around on a couple teams and you're good enough, and all of a sudden you get your opportunity and you shine and you become the starter, there's a solid toughness about that. And once you've had your nose broke basically emotionally, like what happened to Jared Goff, Alex Smith is the same thing. Once you get knocked around a little bit, because now Jared, he's at the controls. He's had everything kind of easy for him. There's no emotional challenge to it at all. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now he has to do it. The pressure is on him. He's never felt pressure like this. Yeah. He's never felt pressure like this. So we'll find out real quick, because now if he gets his heat on, as they say, then now we'll find out who he really is.
Yep. Good point. Definitely. Great point. Okay. All right. So we'll check on that. Definitely. It'll be interesting. Super Bowl 55. So Mike, everybody talks about the young coaches, right? Okay. Young coach this, young coach that, but now we've got two of the old guard guys and Arians and Reed. Let me see. Arians 68, Bruce Arians, and Andy Reid 62.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the league is looking for the Sean McVays and some of those other guys in the league that are 32, 33 years old, and initially when they come in, you don't have to pay them. They call them disposable head coaches. You just throw them away. And you hire young guys. You don't pay them much, because then the general managers can control everything. Mm-hmm. They can control the head coach. When you get a strong head coach that knows what he's doing, then the general managers are leery of it, and you can't fool them. And, then it creates tension sometimes in the front office. And that's just kind of been the dynamics forever in the NFL in that respect. And that's why you just don't see older head coaches get jobs anymore. You've got the front office people or a general manager or president that wants complete control. They just don't want to be questioned about anything. And basically they want to run everything. It's a kind of a power thing. And that's fine. If it works, great. But so far hasn't really worked for anybody.
Yeah, well, this is why you're going to be getting more calls, because these guys have done a great job. And the league is cyclical, right? And it's a copycat league. If two young guys go to the Super Bowl, then what does everyone do the next couple of years? They go out and get young coaches, as we've seen. Now, two older coaches in the Super Bowl, maybe people will go out and try to get older coaches. We'll see.
It's just interesting, Ron. An assistant coach years ago, Dick Seltzer, told me, I said, my very first year in the league, bunch of jobs, the season was over and everything. And I said, well, there's like 7 jobs open. He went right to the blackboard or the grease board. And he said, well, we'll put up the names of let's go right through the book. He went and got all the assistants in the book. We went through and we picked out every guy that we thought was a capable head coach.
Yeah.
By the time we got done, we had 5 guys and there were 7 jobs open. So we had to go back and do, because you don't know everybody, So my point is that was a long time. And then the really capable guys, they go and the other guys get fired. So the pool shrinks. And then they all get into this fad hire young. Mike Shanahan, when he got hired, hire young, hire young, hire young. Al Davis, that whole thing. They're looking for that, and then they pass by a lot of these guys that have been in the perimeter, so to speak, that are very capable. And there's a lot more politics to it than it used. The league used to be. You get hired on merit, and I'm not so sure that that's the case anymore.
No, you're right. David Culley, new head coach with the Texans. Boy, he's been in the league a long time. I always refer back to my early broadcasting days, because a lot of these guys were just assistants or even quality control guys, which is below assistant formally.
Yeah.
And they've worked their way up and up and up and up. And like I said, guys like Aaron Glenn, who I called their games in college, they're now defensive coordinators, things of the like. So maybe maybe it's starting to push that direction already, at least with that hire.
Well, I think it's important. I think the experience that these guys bring is incredibly important, because they've seen so many things that happen, not because they responded the right way, but they've learned from it. I learned way more from failure, before I became a head coach, and as a head coach actually, than I did anything from success. Success, you just you move on, but when you fail, you go back and you break it down real hard and you learn something.
Yeah, that's a great point. Excellent point, Mike. So let's talk about this game here. Super Bowl 5-5. Believe it or not, it's we're getting up there in Super Bowl numbers, man. They don't even put the number up anymore. They just put the Roman numeral and keep it there, I guess. So
it's like my birthday.
you just use Roman numerals now, Mike?
Yeah. We just kind of what do you call average up or down? Yeah, that's what I do.
Average. Take an average.
Or what do you call it?
Take a 20-year average. That'll work.
Yeah.
So Chiefs 16-2 overall. Buccaneers 14-5. Man, this one feels to me like, okay, you've got the quarterbacks. You know what you have there. You've got, someone said, the new Tom Brady and the old original OG Tom Brady. So, that satisfies that part of the game that everyone's looking for. Defensively, we've talked about this. Buccaneers defense is playing real good right now, and especially up front in the front four. And you made that point last week that, they dominated that game, won that game with their front four, with the play of Sue along with Pierre-Paul and those young linebackers inside, David and White. They were exceptional. And the secondary, is solid enough, of course, with that kind of help up front. Defensively, it looks like Kansas City got a little bit better. That was a question mark for us. We were not sure what they were doing early on in the year and where they were going to be and so on and so forth. They've gotten better. They got the Jones kid inside, big D tackle, and he's creating a push inside, and I think that's helped him quite a bit. I'll go right to this, Mike, because this is a concern for me. The Chiefs have lost some people in their offensive line. Okay, they're going to be without, most likely, their starting left and right tackle. Left tackle Eric Fisher, right tackle Mitch Schwartz. How big is that?
Huge.
Starting there.
That's just huge. It's big, not because physically they can't do it. It's just experience. I do know that you go to work on those things in terms of recognition now with the games and the stunts and the blitzes. No, they got to pick it up. The communication, it's easier at tackle than it is at Garden Center. Yeah. There's not a lot of adjustment on the outside. You block that guy, you pass it off and all that, but inside it's remarkably difficult.
Okay.
So on the outside, that part of it is the mental part of it, but just the speed of it and knowing how to do things and seeing new things and adjusting. And that's where you like a guy that's experienced. That's really good. I think it can affected us in the Super Bowl. Like I told you before, we had a pick six because a tackle just blocked the wrong guy, so I mean, it can be a major factor. Will be, I don't know, but sure, it has a potential. But I think for me, Ron, I think all things considered equal, both quarterbacks are going to play well and all that. I think defensively, the team that shows up and plays the best on defense really in this game and keeps the heat on throughout the game. And I do think Kansas City will absolutely change things up, and they'll pressure him, and they're not going to let Tom sit in there and just, peel it away in these zones and whatnot. So I think they will try to confuse him as much as they can, because teams that have made him hold the ball and do things, show him something and a change. Because remember, you have to be on the same page as the wide receivers are. If the wide receivers don't see the same adjustment, that's when you get problems, Yeah. And I just think, looking at the Bucs defensively, man, I wouldn't want to play him. I just wouldn't want to play him, and the linebacker, the key guy to me is White. So what happens when Mahomes gets back there and he starts moving around? The one guy that'll run him down is White.
I know.
And they'll have something for him. They will definitely have something for him. I'm talking about the Bucs for Mahomes. So I think defensively, it's going to be a lot of fun, because they'll be different, perhaps, I think, than what they've been in the past. But I love the intensity and the physical part of how the Bucs play on defense.
A lot of weapons for Kansas City, as we know. Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, if he plays, he's been in and out. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, another guy. He's been in and out. If they can get everybody healthy and going, that helps a lot. But so many weapons. McCole Hardman. You talk about what Tyreek Hill is. Well, this is a little smaller version of Tyreek Hill. Hardman is, and he's the slow guy of the bunch. I think he's just the late 4.3, 40-yard dash guy. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's just, if that were, man, if I'm Todd Bowles, I'm thinking, wow, man, we have to make sure we really shore this up. And I went back and looked at some film of the Buffalo Kansas City game, Mike, and it wasn't the playoff game. It was the game earlier in the season. As you know, Kansas City beat them twice. But Buffalo's answer to Hill and Hardman and all that speed on the field, they lined their safety up, and I counted it. He was 30 yards deep at the snap of the ball, and it was a second down play, second and long, third and long type play. It was unbelievable.
Didn't work, did it?
I mean, if that
he could have put him 50, it didn't work.
God. So if they quick kicked, they'd be perfect. But that just shows how much speed is going on out there and what you have to get ready for.
I just think you have to trap him as much as you can. When you have speed, the one thing you have to do, you have got to rip him apart trying to get off the ball. You cannot let him get off the ball. Yeah. And we used to do a drill. We take linebackers out on wide receivers to help them get off press. We tell the linebacker, just don't let him off. I don't care what you do, just don't let him off. And that was a challenge for those wideouts.
No, that's a good point. Now, the problem with Hill, and I'm speaking from old DB experience, is it's one thing with a linebacker, because the linebacker probably won't run with him in man. Obviously, he'll have some kind of underneath coverage or whatever. But as a corner, when you try to press Hill, if you can get your hands on him, great. But Mike, I don't see many people can get their hands on him. Yeah. And everything's speed release now. Back in the day, guys used to spend time. I was talking to, who was I talking to about with this? Mike, your old receiver at the Rams, Henry Ellard. Okay. Yeah. Henry. I played against Henry. We're great receiver. And I said, Henry, what is the best release move you guys are working on these days? What is it? Henry said, no move. We don't waste our time with that anymore. Speed release.
That's what we did. Yeah.
He said, speed release. Just get off and go now.
Because everything's timed.
Yeah.
And so when I first coached receivers there, when I first went to the Rams, all I did is we spent 20 minutes a day against press, just releasing off press.
Fancy releases.
Just getting off. No head, chops, and every one of them want to chop their feet and make moves and all that kind of dumb stuff. Yeah. Just go. Okay. And then you can back off and do a little bit of that. But that's all we ever did.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So now to your point, going back to how the Buccaneers are going to play this, I also see teams that had success against Kansas City, and Atlanta was one of them. That Atlanta game is a good game to look at, because for all intents and purposes, Atlanta had them beat. The kid holds on to the ball in the end zone. They're beat. And Mike, they did a double on Hill, but they did it with a far safety who didn't even start off looking at Hill. It's like as the play developed and he saw Hill coming across the field, he then picked him up. I think you call it pickups. So the backside corner, as Hill is dragging across the field real deep, he kind of holds on his back shoulder, and once he gets to a point, he turns him loose to the safety, and he looks for another crosser coming over.
Yeah, it's a trap. We just call it a trap.
You call it a trap?
Yeah, you trap those deep receivers in the cross field, and there's some indicators, though, route-wise and from the quarterback that can help the defense see that. But you got to have that called on. You have to have that defense called, obviously, when they're throwing that. So, if you're in some sort of man coverage, obviously you're out of luck. But there's so many forms of press with the safeties help, trap, and all that kind of stuff. And when you start the formation, that kind of blows that out. But there's a lot of different ways of trying to. You're going to have to double him somehow. You have to. I mean, you have to.
You have to. Yeah.
But that's when the running back gets going, and as soon as you see that,
that's the problem there, and that's why it's going to be an interesting game, because once they start running the ball a little bit on you, okay, and then you just get that safety lazy one time, or the coordinator says, "Hey, okay, screw it, I got to get my safety up there. We'll play a simpler coverage. We'll stay 3 deep, or we'll play one. We used to call it one clamp. It was cover one, man to man, the outside, safety deep, but you're clamping everything in your zone like it's man. You're just not chasing it across the field. You see how that goes.
So Ron, they can play a 6-man front.
Okay, yeah.
They have 5 deep, right? They can play a 6-man front because of those 2 linebackers. Nobody else can do that against Kansas City, really, and survive in the running game. With those 2 backers, I think that and because of the 2 tackles, a little inexperience, I believe that they can handle that, which gives them a huge advantage in the back end in terms of trapping receivers.
Now, those 2 backers aren't the biggest guys. White is, he might be 6 foot. He's 2 something, but he's not a thick, heavy guy. Finds the ball great, scrapes well, as does the other kid, David. But maybe they could run right at him and pound him. I've seen Andy do some 2 tight end stuff, but I don't think they want to do the 2 tight end stuff. I don't think Eric Bieniemy, as offense coordinator, wants to do that all day. I think they want that ball in that quarterback's hand, and they want Kelsey, they want Hill, they want the stuff on the outside down the field to shine sooner or later.
Yeah, and when they break the formation and open it up, that's when those 2 linebackers should shine in the running game. And that's when you should have 5 deep where you can do some combinations. If they close the formations, then you go back into your normal 7-man front stuff, Yeah. But I just think that the Bucs have been so impressive defensively. I just the matchup between the Bucs defense and the offense with the Kansas City Chiefs is probably the most dynamic. But whoever shows up on defense and does the best job, because then you haven't looked at the other matchup either, With Kansas City, they do so many different things with pressures.
Yeah.
And remember at the end of that game, a week ago, with Tom at the end, they came off the edges with him. It blew his mind a little bit. It shocked him. So you have to squeeze him as much as you can in the pocket. He's getting a little nervous with that.
Yeah, that's right. Kansas City's defense, to note, in the red zone, they're last in the NFL in red zone defense. I don't know what that really means, because if you're getting run up and down the field at that point, it's.
So here's what I think about that. That's not always those numbers aren't always indicative of the reality of it.
Yeah.
In other words, Kansas City's been out in front on so many people.
Yeah.
That they kind of let up off the gas defensively, so to speak. So, they get down in there and they come in. Complacent's probably the right word, because they do. And, they're up by 3 touchdowns in the 4th quarter. They're going to give up some scores, and, it just, you hate it. You don't want them to do it, but it's just the nature of the beast, and I think it's legitimate to some extent, but you got to be careful of that too, because they're probably better than what the stat says.
Yeah. And everything else are in the middle of the road. And that one is like their only real tanker, but I'm, like you say, I'm not going to put too much weight on that, because that could be a misleading statistic. There was a situation with Tampa Bay last week that I don't want to say it went unnoticed, but the running backs, and I should say running back Fournette, even though it wasn't a lot of yards, his yards were key yards. They played well when they had to play well. They ran the ball well when they had to run the ball. And when they had to get the ball in the end zone, they got it in the end zone. And Fournette, I know he had a big touchdown. And that's what Green Bay couldn't do. Green Bay couldn't get the ball in the end zone.
Hard yards.
Yeah.
Yards after the first contact, and you're moving against pressure. That's so big. And I don't know why at this point in the season this would happen, but there's just a difference in intensity between the Bucs and say the
sure is.
And the Packers. There's a difference in intensity with Buffalo coming down the stretch at the end there. They didn't play. They weren't as physical and as intense as they'd been. And teams have personalities to them. They always do. And you have to, as a head coach, you got to kind of feel that, and address it. But that intensity from the Bucs in that championship game, I mean, they couldn't be more intense. Now, if they can bring that in the Super Bowl, that's something else. And it sounds silly maybe to fans, but there was a almost assumption that, we're going to win this and go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And they got shocked.
That's right. No, that's right. That's right. Another thing too, that game, that NFC championship game reinforced something we've always known. In big games, at some point, and maybe it's just a playoff thing, you're going to have to make a play. You're going to have to pull a play out of your bag that no one expects you to pull out. Now, and the play I'm referencing, Mike, is the fourth. Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. And the deep shot, you catch the corner sleeping, whatever it is on the other side, it doesn't really matter, but you've got to have the guts to put your quarterback when he's standing on the sideline and you're going to maybe kneel on it or kick the ball or whatever, put him out and say, you know what? Let's take a shot.
Don't get scared. Yeah. Can't play scared. You can't coach scared. You can't coach scared in terms of, at that point you take what is normally done in football, which I hate anyway, but here's what you should do. Here's what you should do stuff to win the game in a Super Bowl. You just throw that out the window. And you try to do stuff that's least expected. And that's where you get your big plays that win games. You just do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I saw you do it in a playoff game down there in St. Louis when you guys were playing the Vikings. And all week long, the Vikings were talking about, okay, we know the Rams are this, that. And I remember sitting in the meeting with them, and I was thinking to myself, boy, these guys, they're a little cocky, but they're confident too. And I think I can't remember who you guys played the week before, but you just rolled them up. And I thought to myself, I said, well, I know the Rams aren't going to open up throwing deep because that's what everybody in the world expects them to do. And the first damn play of scrimmage, you threw a deep ball to Isaac Bruce. The roof blew off the place, and that was the end of that game.
So here's what happens with that. First of all, when you sit and look at a tape for hours on coverages and formations, sometimes against particular formations, they'll have formation checks, as you on defense did. Okay, we get into this twin set over here. If they have this coverage call, they'll check it to this. Yeah. So there's always kind of a coverage that they like versus a certain set, especially when you have a good runner like Marshall. Well, that's what they did. Yeah. So we knew coverage-wise what we were going to get. And at that point, it's just a chance, what's the best thing to get how do we get a big play out of this? And so you go back and look, and you look at the secondary and how they respond to stuff. And we just kind of felt, Ron, at that point, that if we could get a big play right away, then it would absolutely take the air out of their sails, so to speak, or it would help things. And plus, the thing about that, Ron, is your players, they love that. When you come out on first down, you say, listen, we're going after the end zone here on this. They just get, they get fired up. It's playoffs. Let's go, buddy. Let's go win it. You're not going to try to grind it down the end and see who wins at the end. You're going to go after them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you went after them.
Yeah, we did.
It was pretty funny, man. It was, wow. And that's it. See, the energy. That's another thing. The energy. Some teams are energy teams that need that energy. You guys, when you guys had that energy and the crowd noise and everything, it just made it that much harder. And you guys just became that much faster in that dome. And I think some teams have to play like that.
Yeah, they do. And Kansas City is one of those teams. Kansas City will have a hard time coming out and just kind of ho-humming it a little bit. Eventually they're going to have to come back and get you on your heels. That's who they are.
Yeah.
If they don't take advantage of their speed, I wouldn't be surprised to see them come out and use their speed immediately.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
on the other end of it, you have to be judicious with the tackle situation, being able to hold up as well.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. It'll be a good one. Um, we were talking about the deal with Stafford going to the Rams and Goff going to the Lions, but let's throw in one more here. I forgot to mention this. Aaron Rodgers. What happens to Aaron Rodgers? What happens with Green Bay right now?
Well, that's a good question. I know what I would do if I was Aaron Rodgers. I'd get out of Green Bay. They've proven that they're not going to help him with, of course, Devontae Adams is there, but
yeah,
I would. To me, the best marriage would be if it'd be in the perfect world, Aaron Rodgers goes out to San Francisco.
Yep.
Where he's from, he went to Cal.
Yep.
I mean, that would be the home run of all home runs, really.
Yeah.
Kid comes home and on a really good football team. Now, that would be a mega story there. So,
Yeah.
I just to get out of there isn't right. When Tom Brady left New England, he knew what was going on. He knew in the near future, they couldn't win. They just didn't have the all that cap stuff finally caught up with them. And the team he picked, they had all the pieces. And I think that's the one team out there for Aaron. If they could get that done, that would work.
What about Deshaun Watson?
Boy, Deshaun Watson would be good anywhere. It's really kind of. I just kind of think a team like Indy, Deshaun Watson would be awesome in Indy. Yeah, such a great defense, and they can run the football. Indy is a great place right now, just waiting for a good quarterback. And
yeah, that's right. I thought maybe Watson might have ended up in L.A. I thought that would have been a really good Hollywood move.
See, he's not Sean McVay's kind of guy.
Yeah.
Look at Sean McVay's personality. By the way, they must have changed the rules in the NFL since I was in it. Head coaches, you couldn't be past the 30-yard line.
This guy runs all the way down.
He's all the way down the end zone. They must have changed that rule. So
yeah, well, we've seen. You're right. We've seen Pete Carroll do his body big flips and his cartwheels whenever someone makes a tackle behind the line of scrimmage for more than 2 yards. So we've seen that. But yeah,
I'm just trying to remember what that felt like to do a cartwheel. Not that I could ever do a cartwheel. But.
Yeah, don't ask me. I can't help you there, brother. Okay, so here's a couple guys. I mean, we'll get into the free agency thing a little bit more, but in the next few weeks here as it becomes pertinent. But these are guys, Mike, that could possibly, be in contract situations, could be either not coming back at all. Guys like Drew Brees, he's maybe done for good. Matt Ryan. There's a guy that's got some time left on the speedometer. Okay. Big salary, big cap number, but he may be done there in Atlanta. May want to get out of Atlanta. Derek Carr is another.
Yeah.
One.
I think Matt Ryan needs to stay right where he is. Help them in the transition, bring a young quarterback in. And I think he means too much to the organization, to that city. He's just too good. He's still a good player. And for him to go some places, it's just different. I just don't see the dynamics of him leaving, but maybe he does.
Yeah.
And Derek Carr, to me, is a diamond. That's a diamond. Derek Carr is absolutely better than what he's playing there. And I don't mean that as a slam on John or anything else like that. I just don't think. I think it's a little bit like LA. There's a disconnect between the head coach there and that quarterback. But I think Derek Carr is really an elite player, and I'll stand on that one.
No, you're right. I mean, in the cap numbers, these guys I'm mentioning, they're either getting old in the tooth, long in the tooth, or there's a cap situation that could force them out. Or maybe they want to get out. Carr, he's got about $2.5 million of dead cap space. So in the big picture speaking, just, with the cap salary or salary cap just under 200 million, that's penny. So that they have
chump change. Yeah, that's insignificant. But I think John's got to decide whether, because for what they do in offense, and this is not a slam on what they do, but it's not a real quarterback friendly offense at the Raiders. It really isn't.
No, I get that feeling. You're right.
Yeah, he's just kind of there on third down, make a good play, and just kind of manage the game, kind of a deal. And now that would be a huge. Derek Carr in Indy to me would be That's a match
one.
made in heaven, yeah. Because
that'd be a good one.
Because what Rivers was doing with them, you could do with Cart like that, and you could with Deshawn too. But I just think that would be a good match.
Yeah, yeah. Kirk Cousins, he's got a huge cap number. I mean, the Vikings would end up with a $41 million cap hit if they try to do something there. I don't know that.
Don't see that happen. Yeah,
I don't see that happen. I don't know that anyone would jump on any of that. Sam Darnold, that was hot for a while with the Rams, so that's not going to happen. Why didn't? I wonder. Do you think that Derek Carr would have been a good fit for McVay?
No, he has the same kind of. Derek Carr is. He's a kind of people are just all different, whether you're players or not. He's kind of a pleaser.
Yeah.
If you encourage Derek, if all you do is encourage him and pat him on the butt and tell him, I know what you did, but it's not right. Here's what we like you. He'll get it and he'll go. But if you chew him out, he's just going to, and
that's it. Yeah.
So that's why I say his personality with John is going to chew on him a little bit. It's just not going to be real good. And I say that because McVay is going to be hard on him. And, like for instance, you take Derek Carr and put him down in Tampa Bay, he'd be great with Arians. Because Arians kind of has a way of massaging those guys along a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
And, an older, experienced guy it's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that what Jimmy Garoppolo has that anyone wants. Maybe I don't know. You never know how a guy's been taught, like you always say, and what he has, but I don't see that. Mason Rudolph is there. Carson Wentz and even Dak Prescott. And I think the big issue with Dak is you got to see what happens with his ankle and see how he comes back physically.
Yeah, that's a shame. They've got to keep Dak. Somehow, some way, it's just got to get done. I don't see him ever leaving there. But and if you know him at all, he's just a wonderful kid. He's a wonderful human being. I just don't see him. The one that's interesting is Carson Wentz, because Chicago's going to need a quarterback, right? Trubisky obviously is not going to go back there. I don't believe so. I don't think that's going to happen. So what does Chicago do for a quarterback, right? And Carson Wentz is just like what we talked about, earlier. A quarterback that comes out there as a top pick like that and struggles, and everything's kind of been given to him, and all of a sudden you get kicked in the, in the groin, so to speak, and you got to come back and make a decision. And there's a different approach. There's a different intensity. There's an anger, if you will, when you come back. Some of those guys when they come back, or they just don't come back.
Yeah. And just to wrap a bow around this, we've got about 5 minutes left, Mike. Let me go back to Brady. And so Tom Brady now takes his magic and 6 Super Bowl wins down to Tampa Bay. And in spite of how rough this thing looked in the beginning, even the head coach called him out. I don't want people to forget about that one. But here he is. He's right back in the big show. What is this offense that they're running, Mike? And is Brady running it, or is this a system that's been put in place by Leftwich, and Leftwich has given it to him? What is this?
No, I think Brady's got a lot to do with it. And I think Arians has a lot to do with it as well. How much Leftwich has to do with it, I really don't know. But I look at some of the things that they used to do in New England, and just listen to Tom over the years in interviews. He's always looking for new things in the passing game. You listen to Peyton Manning. Well, on that drive, the guy would at 6 yards, and all of a sudden he'd delay. How'd you do that? What was the, he's asking those kinds of questions. And if you're not part of the offense and installing it and coaching it, you don't ask those questions. So to me, he's always had a little bit into it, and I think they've given him full reign. And I think a lot of what they do, he has some input into it. And I think Arians is obviously, he's a real good guy in the passing game too. And Leftwich, I think it's a good mixture there, but Tom ultimately will decide, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows more about throwing the football of those three? Wow.
Well, it's the quarterback. I mean, and Arians is, he's coached a lot of good teams, and so I'm not going to take anything away from him as well.
But Tom clearly is going to know more about, and he has to do it. So here's a guy who knows as much or more than all the coaches about the passing game and what they're trying to do. And also he has to do it. So wouldn't it make sense to really listen to him and let him kind of drive you through the game plan and whatnot?
But I guess that's the big picture point that so many people miss, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let your guy be his guy, be your guy. Let your guy be your guy.
But there's so few of those guys. I think once a guy has been a starter on a good team for 5 years or more and had lots of success, then they get more and more control of what you're doing and you listen more and more to them, and that's kind of the way it goes.
Mike, is that offense called, is it a multiple offense? Is it is it a West Coast offense? It's not a vertical passing game like you used to run. That doesn't look like that to me.
I think it's a pragmatic offense, and I think that's kind of what we used to try to be as well. I think they're good at taking a look at a defense and what they need to do to beat that defense.
I see.
Attack certain areas, and they don't just. People think that offenses come out and they have a bunch of plays that they start with the beginning of the year, and that's what they do, and they add some plays as they go. Well, maybe some people do. We never did that. Each week we morphed into something different, and I think for the most part, I think these guys do too.
That's why you're always saying toward the end of the year, you've got to be able to adjust
and right.
add or take out of your playbook to be successful.
Or as they say, don't lock your knees.
Don't lock your knees. Yeah. Well, that's okay. My knees are so bad I can't lock anything. So. All right, Mike, we're out of here. We'll next week we'll break down what happens in this game, obviously, and then we'll really dive into free agency and more the other positions and more changes on staffs and things like that. So, all right,
Ronnie.
Good, man. Talk to you next week.
All right, thanks.